Furiosa, Mad Max Saga, and The Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes are two of the most anticipated movies in the first half of 2024. At the time of this episode, one of the movies is doing really well at the box office. The other one, not so much. So what went right? What went wrong? Let's find out in this episode of Moviebeings.
So, great intro as always, Darren.
Well, I want to keep that one short because I noticed that for the other episodes, I kind of went on a bit too long.
Oh, they're all right. I think you get to the point. I did like the Tom Hanks one. You did talk. Wait till, the AI one as well. It was probably a bit long, but that was good as well. But.
Yeah. But for this one, I wanted to keep it short because obviously the people, they want to know about the reviews of these movies. And I'm sure you are excited to talk about this movie as well.
I am too, but let's ramble on for a bit longer just to annoy them. So anyway.
Yeah, well, you mentioned something that when you went to the movie cinema, like you noticed that the cost of the movie cinema is like really high now.
It is very high. I was like, I don't know, we're in Australia, just for reference, but at Hoyt's, at the point of when I went to see Furiosa, it was like $31 a ticket per adult.
That's crazy.
I did it. I was looking for it to get it cheaper. I did eventually, but I was like, oh my God. Because I went me and my brother, so that's $60. And then I was like, I wonder how much popcorn and a drink. It was literally one popcorn and two drinks. It was $30 as well, as much as the ticket.
You might as well go to a high-end restaurant and get a nice
Well, that's what
meal
I was
out of it.
thinking. I'm like, you could go get a set menu probably for a better price than that.
Yeah.
And the popcorn, what's popcorn cost to make? Like $1?
Yeah. So that was a really high markup for the theaters for sure. They need to make the money back somehow, right?
Yeah, I know, but they're already making them cheaper because not many people are going to the cinemas now. Because when I went to see the Planet of the Apes, it was already gone down a little bit.
Ah, okay.
Because that's what I saw when I was talking to my mum about it. She's like, oh, even Sundays, if you go Sunday early morning, you can get $10 tickets. I'm like, shit, I'm going on early Sunday if we're going to watch movies.
So you mentioned that you went to the theater to watch Furiosa, and you go to the theater to watch the Planet of the Apes as well. Okay. So which movie should we jump into first?
I think Planet of the Apes, or The Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is a good starting point.
It seems like the titles are getting longer and longer and longer.
Oh my God. That's the first thing I'll mention. The title is a bit silly.
Yes.
Like, I get it, but I really wish it was just like the Planet of the Apes,
Kingdom of the
and then
of the Apes,
here's
perhaps.
like the title. I don't know what I would have done, but like the Kingdom of Caesar or something like that, or
Okay, but I think the word apes is part of the franchise now, right? So they want to keep it in there.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what I mean. That's why you start off with like, oh, this is the Planet of the Apes, Kingdom of Caesar or something. It's a bit easier to say, oh, I watched the new Planet of the Apes movie, not oh, I watched the Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Too many.
Yeah, but I think like eventually, if they want to continue this franchise, they will combine the different words in. So they will be like, the Rise of the Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, the War for the Rise of the Kingdom of the.
Yeah, oh my God. So anyway,
so this movie is the one that performs quite well at the box office. So right now, the movie is grossing $374.8 million and change worldwide on a budget of $160 million. So, on the formula of a successful blockbuster, it has already made 2.5 times of the budget, which is considered a success. However, you didn't enjoy this movie as much as the other movies.
We'll quickly go over the movie now. Trying a bit spoiler free, hopefully.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought it was fine.
Yeah.
But like I enjoyed like the ape storyline of the movie. I thought that was very good. I didn't enjoy the human side of it. I thought the human side was probably one of the weaker points in this movie. I thought it was a little long. Like I remember sitting there at one point and like, how long is this going on? Like I wasn't enthralled the whole way. There were like certain points that are very exciting and very moving, but points in the movie I was like, I'm not very into this at the moment. Yeah. And I don't know, like all the normal things like CG great, all the apes look amazing as always. Yeah. But yeah, they were probably like my quick brief discussion. Yeah. Like I don't know if we give it a number or a ranking, but I think it's like a little bit above average. But maybe if you're not into like the ape movies, you mightn't enjoy it as much is what I would say.
Yeah, and I was one of those people who haven't seen the other apes movies before watching this movie. But do you want to give us a quick synopsis of this story so that we have something to go along with?
Sure. So we start out in a village with Noah and his friends. I can't remember their names exactly, but they've got like, they're on their like little path, their little like ritual ceremony is to like find an egg because they're the village of like the hawk or something. That's like the thing they do. So he goes to get this hawk egg and takes it back to the village, and there's a bit of like play between him and his father. His father's like the leader of the village, and he like expects big things from him, and he expects a lot from himself. And then through an accident where he runs into a human, he breaks the egg. So in the middle of the night, he has to run off and get another egg. And then he notices a whole bunch of other apes attacking them or attacking one of their scouts because they were looking for the human. And he's like, oh shit. And then gets back to the village, and all the apes have attacked the village. And that's like the jumping point for the movie. And then it goes into his like journey. So he meets like other apes, he runs in with the human, and then we run into like the main protagonist, Caesar. And then like that journey through there of him like figuring out what he wants and what he's trying to manipulate, because he has other humans there, is like how he's using humans to further his own goals, and Noah trying to figure out where he stands in all of this essentially.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good synopsis, like especially for someone who hasn't seen the other movies like myself. I would say that considering if this is just a standalone movie, I really enjoy the story. And I think the CGI in this movie is a lot better than I expected. Obviously, you know, with the other movies, I know that Andy Serkis plays Caesar, but the Caesar in this movie is different.
Yeah, and I did enjoy that like aspect. If we're kind of like, that's jumping a bit like to the end of it's like the later half of the movie when Caesar comes in. When I was saying it's a bit long, that's what I mean. I'm like the main guy doesn't really come in till the end, or the end half of the movie. But yeah, I did enjoy like the Caesar part of it, because Caesar that we know of in the other Planet of the Apes movies is dead, because the first scene is like them doing a ceremony, which I felt was maybe a little unnecessary, because when I saw it with my mate, we're like, did they need this? Like, I think it didn't. I think we would have understood at this point that Caesar was gone. Yeah, and then having the ceremony at the start of the movie is maybe a bit much, because like you don't hear about Caesar again until the apes come in, because when the apes attack, they say this is for Caesar, and you're like, what? Like. For like the Caesar we know, but then we learn that it's a different Caesar. Okay, but because I feel like it doesn't lessen later, because Noah meets another ape called Rocker, who's kind of like the messiah, like the priest or the messiah, however you want to talk about it, of Caesar. He like keeps the knowledge and keeps his story going. And he runs into him, and that's how he learns about the Caesar as we know it. But then when we run into the villain Caesar, he's not quite. He uses the old Caesar a little bit, but he's referring to himself more as a Caesar. Yeah, as we know it, because he has a human captured that helps him, and he tells him stories. Yeah, and the old Roman stories of Caesar, as like in our culture, as we see a Caesar. So that's how he sees himself. Yeah. So I do think that's like a very interesting point of like the dynamic of him using Caesar's old image as the apes know him as like the greatest leader, or the like that gave him the freedom, and then also that kind of Pontius Pilate Caesar that we understand in history, where he's like
the tyrant,
because his goal, if we're going into Caesar's kind of like goals in the movie, he's trying to make a kingdom, and he, like Caesar did, he goes and captures the smaller tribes and like tries to integrate them into his kingdom or into his empire. So I thought that was very well done, like on that side. That's why I'm a bit sad that it was like, I do like the length at the start, like getting to know Noah and like setting up his goals and like learning lessons. But I felt like it took a bit long to get to the Caesar part for me personally.
That's very fair. And I think we can jump into the review of the actual movie now. So when you go to the theater and watch the movies, what did you like about this movie in particular?
Like you already touched on, and we touched on before, the CG's amazing. Yeah. I thought the story between like Noah and the apes in general was a very, very well done. Like the Caesar part's very good. Noah's growth from when he's initially at the village, meeting Rocker, who's like a great influence on him, meeting May, the human who's been stalking him, interacting with her is like a big point, because they only, what do they call him? Soul? They call the human soul?
The Nova.
Yeah, Nova. That's it. That's what they call him. Yeah. And they think they're a bit like, they don't trust them. They're like, they're like a bit of a scavengers. They always do bad things to us. But this is like Noah's Ark of like learning to trust the humans, and like, even though it's only the one human, but like, he's a bit more trusting and understanding. And that's kind of his like, there's a few things to his arc, but I did really enjoy that.
Besides the CGI, I really enjoy the casting for this movie as well. So Andy Serkis is not playing the ape in this movie. Wow. So Owen Teague is playing the ape, and Freya Allen, she plays Nova / May. She was playing Siri in the Witcher series on Netflix. I think in this movie, it allows her more room for her acting chops rather than just like playing a character.
Well, and there's a bit more going on here as well, because in this part of the history, the humans don't speak. So there's a bit of play with her not using communications to like act. And she like going through her storyline, she like explains why she doesn't speak. But I do think she does a good job of like her character, but I do think her character is one of the weakest parts of the movie.
Okay.
Just from her goals and how she acts between like her acts with other apes and stuff, which I like kind of understand. And we see right at the end of the movie as well. But I feel like I feel like there's meant to be another movie after this as well. But her learning to like be more trusting of apes or even understanding her place in the world now is what I think is like another part of this movie of like the apes, it's their world. The other human that's there, he's just like, we're in their world now. It belongs to them. And she's still hung up on going back to the way things were, essentially.
Yeah. And I think, like there's nothing wrong with having like different worldviews and different motivations. But I think in this, it's so tricky to set up like a good perspective for the audience to follow the story. I think throughout the majority of the movie, Noah is the anchoring point of view for us to follow the story, right? But I think when we get to like the half point, it kind of switches
when May comes in
to May.
She's like half and half.
Yeah.
And I feel like it shouldn't have been.
Yeah.
I really think it should have been Noah's story the whole way through. And that May should have been more of a backstep in her story. Because I do feel, I don't know how they would have figured out how they like, we need to have like a human story as well. I think they should have, even though the other three movies are pretty much Caesar's movies, but it should have still been a step back from the humans. I feel like even though there's not many in it, it's just mainly her that takes a bigger point of the vocal event. Like you said, at that end part of the movie, it does feel like it's her story.
Yeah, correct. Yeah,
which I don't think it's bad, but I feel like it does take away from Noah's story a bit, which I felt was very good.
Yeah, and that is like one of the issues that we have spoken about regarding like the big blockbusters, especially for the Marvels and the DC. One of the issues that we spoke about is like the lack of consistent point of view, especially when you have like a few different characters and different motivations. If you switch the perspective in the middle of the movie, it will confuse the audience.
Because I don't think it's confusing as well. Like, I don't think it's like a confusing point, like you're saying. It's not like, where's this going? It's just more of a shift. Because it like shifts focus onto her because she's now like the vocal point of the movie because Caesar wants to use her for getting in this giant vault, giant army base. So it like shifts focus onto her. Like Noah's still doing like what he's still going through his journey, but I think that should have taken a back step almost. Yeah. Because her story is needed to push the story forward as well, which is always hard. Like, how do we take that out? I don't know if they took that out. I'll put that in. Because like I said, even Caesar comes in late. Yeah. Like, I don't know how they... Yeah. Because it's weird. Because I do think the length of Noah's story does help. But that is the longest part, right? Like his journey and learning. Yeah. So that's why it's like always hard to figure out where you take away and wouldn't have. But for mine, it would be like maybe taking May's story back a bit and maybe not as important and maybe leading into the next movie with her having more vital importance and moving on from that. Yeah. Because at the end of the movie, it does set up for something. It does feel like it's setting up for something big. And I'm like, this feels already a lot when this is like starting up the franchise again. Because it has been, how long since those other movies? Like 6-7 years since the last one? Yeah. So it has been a little while. Yeah. And like starting up again. Yeah. It already seems like, here's going to be another war with the humans or something. And it's like, we've already done that. It's a bit soon to be like, we're back into it. Yeah. I feel like there could have been more development between like how the apes and humans try to figure out how to work together, or if they even do that. Yeah. Because like I was referring to at the end there. Yeah. That last scene where she's like talking to Noah and she's like got the gun behind her back and I'm like, you bastard, you're just going to shoot this guy after all he's done for you.
That scene was one of the controversial scenes after the movie was out because there are a lot of different speculations why she has a weapon.
She just doesn't trust him.
Well, I mean,
that's her whole viewpoint through the whole movie. She doesn't trust him. Yeah. She betrayed him like 3 or 4 times during the movie, which is sad because I do think that I do enjoy that contrast. Because Noah, through the whole movie, he's learning to trust. He's learning different things. He's learning about how apes should work together, where May is very much a singular essence and is trying to work for herself. Nothing, like she has a greater goal in like mind, but her focus is her own. Where Noah, it's like about his village, about the other apes, about learning about their history essentially. Where for Maeve, it's just, I've got to find this thing. and I'll do whatever it takes to get it.
Yeah. And you know what this dynamic reminds me of? It reminds me of the How to Train Your Dragon series, and especially in terms of the character of Noah and Hiccup. And the reason why I drew the connection is because the character Hiccup is set up in a very similar way to Noah. So Hiccup is the son of the chief, but physically he's incompetent comparing to his father and all the people in the tribe. Like in the Viking tribes, everyone is big, everyone is strong. He's very small, he's very weak. But one thing that the character Hiccup was created better than Noah is because of his weaknesses, it helps him create his strength. Because he doesn't have the strength, he needs to use his wit. He needs to create a lot of mechanisms and creation to help him balance out the battlefield. And in this series, he has to learn to work with the enemy. In this case, are the dragons. And I think the character of Hiccup is much better built compared to Noah. And I think we get to the part where we talk about the things that we don't like about this movie. One of the things that I don't like about the movie is the lack of dimension on the main character, Noah. So from the beginning, we set up that Noah is a son of the leader of the tribe. He climbs really well. He has his insecurities, but the thing is, we don't know about his weaknesses. Like, what are his biggest weakness, right? So if we use that to compare to Hiccup, his biggest weakness is his physical strength. In a world where they live with dragons, like physical strength is like the thing that you need to battle
in a Viking
beast,
tribe
right?
as well.
Correct. So when I watched Noah, and I was like, okay, he climbs really well. He was born with that gift because his mom was saying like, oh, I knew you would climb well.
And they all do. A lot of the other apes are like, yeah, you're a great climber.
Then the other weakness that the movies try to set up for Noah is the fact that he likes to follow rules.
Yeah, which is, I think that's more, like that's a lesson I feel like he learns.
Yeah.
At the end, like there's the whole ending scene where he's like not following your rules anymore or whatever.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's like a weakness.
Yeah, correct.
Because that's just how their society lived, right? I think it's more of a societal lesson for them, or how he feels like he should take his tribe going forward.
Yeah.
Because that's when he's learning about Caesar and stuff, and it's like, about working together with apes and humans, not just, and then just not following the rules when it's like, you know, there's times where that will be against you. It's better to try like break out of that.
Yeah.
But with your point of like his character, because they do later in the movie when he runs into Caesar, he like call him like a smart ape, even though they don't really play into it at all. There's one scene where he like fixes their like pokey zappy stick, the cow prod.
Yeah.
And that's like, and he's like, oh, they said you fixed it. And I'm like, oh, that's like the only thing he does that you would say is like smart. Like there's nothing else through the whole movie that like make him like, oh, he's a smart ape.
Yeah. And that's the thing as well, like one of the things that makes the audience kind of relate to the characters is when they can relate to the struggles, right? But for him, he's strong, he climbs well, he's smart, he fixes things. It seems like the more that you progress with the movie, the less you care about the main character because they don't have any kind of attributes for the audience to relate to their struggles. Right. And then, you know, it takes me back to Hiccup again, because when we first start out with the character, we know that he's weaker than the other people. So that's why he needs to be creative with the tools to help him balance out the playfield. And throughout the movie, we know why he's so good with the tools, because he needs to be, right? In Noah's case, I would say maybe like give him like a weakness, like give him like a disadvantage. Maybe he has one arm. Maybe he loses an arm during a climb, to save his friends. It can help establish his character. Like he really cares for his fellow people. But because of that, he lost an arm, so now he's at a disadvantage. And because of that, he needs to figure out like how to balance out the disadvantage.
I don't think it needs to be like a big weakness, but it doesn't really show like maybe he's a weak climber to begin with.
Yes.
Maybe that's a better point. And then he becomes stronger through the movie.
Yes.
Because I do think his like growth is kind of more morality, or more like on that side, like thinking about how his like place in the world and how like his tribe maybe should be run, or even his interactions with humans.
Yeah.
More than like maybe his physical growth.
Yeah.
Which I thought was stronger. His like more mental growth was probably stronger. Because even when he fixes the cow prod, he doesn't really use it like the next scene they get like captured anyway.
Yes.
So it wasn't like a big thing. It really didn't help them.
Yeah.
But like, I don't necessarily think there needs to be like, I can see why like a weakness would help.
Yeah.
Because I do think it is a good story. He's like, from like start to beginning, but there could be things done better or even maybe used better. But I definitely don't think like looking at May's story is like a bit weak, probably a lot weaker than his.
Yeah.
But it is very strange because I do like my favorite part. Well, I know we're talking about our worst, but like Rocker, I do think he's a great character and hilarious.
Yes.
And it's sad when they like get rid of him, but I do agree to some extent. But that's why I was bringing up the smart thing. They kind of shoehorn that in a bit because they're like, why does Caesar want to talk to him, right? Because he brings him up to speak to him. It's like, oh, because he's smart. That makes him like stand out. But we don't see it through the whole movie.
Exactly.
Like you say, like maybe he isn't stronger. Maybe he's a weak climber. Maybe he has to use his ingenuity to like get these things.
Yeah.
Because there's that one point where he climbs to get his egg at the beginning and he like throws the steel pillar to like climb further.
Yeah.
Like that's a bit of smart, but it's like, you're not like thinking about it like that. It's like, oh, that's like a smart thing and that's like his thing. It doesn't really do that through the whole movie.
Yeah.
But I wish they started that a bit earlier and then it would have been a better through line for that.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, he definitely is a smart ape.
Yeah.
But like, I can see your point.
Yeah. And I would say as well, like by giving him that kind of weakness, just in my opinion, it would make his journey more meaningful and his turn of event at the end would be much more powerful as well. So for example, in order for him to achieve his goal and because of his disadvantage, he needed to use a technology created by human. For example, like a machine or something that created by human for him to achieve his goal. And then he realized, oh, maybe apes and human can work together. I would say the character of Raka is really good.
He's nearly my favorite. He is my favorite character.
Yeah. He's my favorite too. And, you know, he's like the anchoring point of morality and the lessons and things like that. But speaking of the aspects that we don't like about this movie, I think this movie falls into a trap of having a weak villain.
I don't think he's weak. I just don't think he has enough time. Because it's very quick that it's like, oh, he's the bad guy. You get the gist of it. And that's it.
Yeah.
Like you don't get much time to develop his character because most of the time is worked on developing Noah and May, essentially.
Yeah.
So like if either getting to Caesar quicker or even maybe the story isn't the Kingdom movie, it's something else. But because that's what it feels like. It's like the Kingdom part of the movie doesn't come until like the later half. So that's why it's hard. Like you want to get a bit more, you don't get introduced to the villain until like, you know, the later half and it hurts it a bit.
Yeah.
But I do agree a bit like he needed more time.
Yeah.
Because I do think he was good. Like the actor who plays him does a very good job of like portraying him and doing all the things for him. But I feel like he's in 3 or 4 scenes through the whole movie, right? I think he just needed a bit more time to establish him. Yeah. Either maybe at the start when because it's more of like a mystery, right? I think that's what they're going for when they're yelling Caesar and it's like, oh, they're like, who is they? Caesar's dead, right? Like who are they referring to? Like I didn't mind that part, but maybe he could have been leading the army or like fights.
That's a fair judgment, and I would say giving him a bit more screen time would definitely help. And I think if they can give him a bit more character development as well, because right now, if I watch the movie, he's a villain that does villainous things because he's just a villain. He wants to get into the vault to get all the technology to do what, and let's say. If his ultimate goal is to create like a kingdom or just the apes, I really want to know the motivation behind it because that will give him more dimension.
Because all we get is he likes the stories, right?
Correct. And that is very shallow.
That's his kind of like, oh, I heard the stories, let's do it. Which is like, it is motivation, but it's like very weak to be like, oh, I'm doing this because I think it's cool, essentially.
Yeah. I'm really torn with this movie because I think overall it has a lot of good things going on for it.
Yeah, I'm the same as well. Yeah.
Yeah, but then you know, like when we really look into the details and the different aspects, you will realize that you know the movie could have done a bit better in terms of like preparation and the character developments, both for the villains and the heroes. And just like you said, like May's story can play a
bit more of a back role.
Yeah.
Because I definitely think they really thought like, oh, we need to have like a human aspect, which I don't think is bad, but I think they could have left her maybe being clever to like the end or something. Yeah. And then like revealing that, and then that can lead into the next movie about like dealing with her. Because it like like I was talking about the end, because the end's like a huge reveal that there's still more humans alive and that they're communicating with each other. And it's like, oh shit, there's going to be more humans and they're going to fight each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I feel like if we had like a whole other movie, because I really hope if they do another one, that it's more about May's evolution into like trusting, just trusting in general, or even trusting the apes.
Yeah.
Because I do think that was a good. I do say that I feel a bit bad about her like having the gun at the end to like shoot him, because he's evolved to the point where he's like, I trusted you multiple times and you broke that trust. And even at the end, she was ready to shoot him because she thought he might have, maybe rightfully so, attacked her or something.
Yeah.
But because he was just like, oh, you know, I've like done right. Like, what do you need to do? What do you like? You need to work on this, probably not me. Like, I'm done what I can.
Yeah. And I think this is something that it keeps taking me back to the How to Train Your Dragon series, because like the dragons role in the movie in terms of the arc of the main character is very minimal. And then at the end, they kind of set up for the next part where like, oh, there's a bigger world of the dragons, right?
Yeah.
So, but like the whole main story of that first movie is the protagonist's arc to accept his disadvantage and how to incorporate that, and then at the same time, he tried to change the perspective of his tribe about the dragons, which I think is very very well made. And I think, you know, like this Apes movie can really use some of that, just like you mentioned, right? You want to make May's story a bit of a backseat and kind of help Noah's journey a bit more. But I think if I have to give this movie a score out of 10, I would give it like 6.5.
Yeah, I'd probably agree. I'd probably give it like a 6 or something. Like, it's almost there, but like there's just little things that get in the way, because I definitely think out of all the other Ape movies, or the newer ones, obviously, this is probably the weakest, I would say. But I do think it's still like capable. Like, it's just, you know, would have liked a little bit more, but I'm glad it wasn't completely like ruined to be like, okay, this is done.
Yeah.
But is that a good point to leave it on? Anything else you want to touch?
No, I don't want to mention anything else. I think, you know, like if you're not a fan of the Apes franchise, I think this movie is still like a good movie to enjoy with your friends and family. But just like Tim said, you know, like if you watch the other ones, you would definitely see that this one is the weakest comparing to the other ones. But then we can move on to your favorite in this episode, I would say, Furiosa, Mad Max Saga. Was
another confusing name as well. The Mad Max Saga. Furiosa.
Is it because Mad Max is nowhere to be found in this movie?
Well, he's technically in it for like half a scene.
So this movie was released in 2024, 9 years after Mad Max Fury Road.
Very long time.
And Anya Taylor-Joy played Furiosa instead of Charlize Theron. And Mad Max Fury Road earned $380 million worldwide, with $153 million in the US. However, Furiosa, on a budget of $168 million, only earned $160 million worldwide and only $63 million domestically. So, to kind of sugarcoat it a little bit, I think this movie didn't do very well at the box office.
And of the time of this, might only have like a couple more weeks in cinemas. I hope it might pick up, but I don't think it will.
And that's the thing as well. Like, it's usually like the spread of like the word of mouth, right? So when people watch it for the first time, if they don't think it's a good movie, they wouldn't recommend it to their friends and family, or they wouldn't come back to view it for the second time. But can you give us a quick synopsis of this story?
So we're following Furiosa. So if you've watched
Fury Road,
you already kind of know who the character is, but it's essentially her life story up to the movie. So we start of her as like a young girl. They're in this like prosperous town in the middle of nowhere. So the last like vestige of hope, essentially, in the Mad Max universe, in the middle of Australia, of course. And she notices some other, like, I guess a gang. They're like a biker gang. And she tries to disrupt them so they don't tell them about the like prosperous land. And she gets captured and taken back to their gang. And they're like, oh, we got to figure out where she comes from, because she's a full body. So the whole thing about like full bodies and half bodies. So she's like a full-born and not like a mongrel bad breed, essentially. So they go to try find her, but her mother's gone out to save her and is like hunting them down and has like killed a few of them and almost saves her. But she ends up getting captured by the enemy, and the mother dies, and she sees it all, and it's like a brutal thing. So she's like completely out, and she's in the middle of the wasteland, caught by Dementus, and he's a part of her gang now, and her kind of story through that, and then going to the Citadel, which is like the next phase, meeting Immortal Joe, and then like finding her story there, and kind of we get into that and how she lives there and deals with that, and then eventually becoming like the driver of the big rig. What do they call the big rig?
The War Rig.
The War Rig, yeah.
Love that name.
Yeah, I know, War Rig. I always forget it. I'm like, so many different cars and bikes and trucks in it, but yes.
That's a very good synopsis. So you went to watch this movie in theaters. What did you like about this movie?
There's a lot of things I loved about this movie. So I don't even know where to start. I do think Furiosa's story is very, very strong, and both actors that portray her as the young girl and Anya Taylor-Joy. I did write down the name of the actress of the young girl, but they do a great job of portraying her. And even like when I was saying about May in the Planet of the Apes, there's not like a lot of dialogue. It is more physical and in the like emotions in the face. And I thought they did a great job. And Chris Hemsworth as well as the villain. I feel like he had a great time in this.
Yes.
You could feel how much fun he had. A lot of the cinematography is amazing. Like a lot of the scenes, like the wide shots of the desert and stuff were like great. And even a lot of the action scenes are always filmed amazing in both of these movies.
Yeah.
And what's even like the music and the sound, like I love the sound of like using didgeridoos and stuff. A lot of Australian kind of like folk and like lore that like really brings it through. The rev of the engines and the cars all sound amazing.
Yeah. Another aspects that I really like about this movie is also the like how good the CGI look.
Yeah, it does look very good. Like,
you know, like when we were talking about like before this movie came out, that we were very concerned about like this movie using more CG instead of practical effects comparing to Fury Road. But I didn't really pay attention to like
you
how
don't
the
really
CG,
notice it. Yeah, because there is CG obviously in Fury Road, but not as much. There's still like points you can see, but like there's a lot more in this. But I do think it's because it covers a lot more. There's a lot more going on, because that's another thing I love about this movie. It sets up, it shows you the rest of the world. Like in Fury Road, you hear about these places like Gas Town and Bullet Town, and how their ecosystem works. And it shows a lot of that in this film, which I really enjoyed. Like showing how everything works, how they all help each other and work together. And how Dementus kind of throws a wrench in the works.
Another aspect that I really like about this movie is it brings a lot of job to Australia. So this is like historically the biggest movie in Australia with a budget of 333 million Australian dollars, and it employ 3,000 people in Australia at different aspects of the movie in terms of like the special effects, the stunts people.
Does Chris Hemsworth work? Like, is he come down as an Australian or?
Well, I would say so, but
does he live here? I don't even know. Does he live here or does he live in?
I think
America?
He lives in Queensland.
Okay, so that counts. He lives here.
Yes, but I think you know, like he has a different salary comparing to all the other people.
Just a couple extra million.
And I found this out as well. Out of the 3,000 people who were involved in this movie, some of them were ex-convict.
Oh yeah. Oh,
so you know, like they employ a lot of people, and this movie got a lot of incentives from the New South Wales government. They gave the production company tax rebate. 40% of the movie budget can be claimed back.
Damn.
So because the movie is bringing a lot of jobs to the country, right?
And even future films and stuff.
Yeah.
That's why it's sad that it didn't do well, right? Because that's what I remember. I'm like, oh, it's a lot of Australian actors that maybe US or, you know, international people wouldn't notice too much. But I was like, oh, I know that guy. I know this guy. Like I've seen him in old like Australian TV shows or even comedians. There's a lot of comedians in this that I like recognize. They've even used, there's one, you know, there's like the short kid with like the big head. He's like, he was a internet phenomenon because he like helped protect like a bully or stood up against a bully, and he gets put in the movie for that. Like stuff like that's kind of great.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I would say like the two lead roles, Anya Taylor-Joy and Chris Hemsworth, they are very capable actors, and they are very marketable people as well, right? So
that's why I was surprised as well, because they did do I feel like somewhat of a decent push. I remember like a couple of weeks before they were doing the circuits and stuff. So I was like, oh.
Yeah, and like they get a lot of people from the previous movies back as well, like George Miller. He's back to direct this movie.
Well, who else were they going to get?
Yeah, and the guy who plays Immortan Joe, he was in the initial Mad Max movie. He was playing like Toe Cutter.
The initial Mortal Joe who played it in Fury Road passed away.
Yeah.
So they got and I thought he did a good job. You didn't really notice it was a different actor.
Yes. There are a lot of good aspects about this movie. So this is why I think this movie is very, very controversial because it's very critically acclaimed, but then it bombed at the box office.
Yeah, exactly.
So armed with all this knowledge, Tim, like the $100 million question is, what went wrong at the box office?
I feel like it's more out of the control of like the movie itself. Because I really like the movie, obviously, from what I've already said. So I don't think it's like a bad movie. Like, I don't think it would be like people wouldn't... I feel like maybe they're not as interested. Like we mentioned before, 9 years from Fury Road.
Yeah.
It can be a benefit sometimes with movies, but I do feel like maybe the audience... Maybe it isn't like, maybe I don't really want to watch a thing about like a sub-movie about a character.
Yeah.
From like Mad Max. It isn't even Mad Max.
Yeah.
Which I feel... It's a bit silly, but, maybe that's what people think. Like we were talking before, the price of going to the cinema.
Yeah.
I know in Australia it's a bit outrageous at the moment. So I don't know what it's like around the rest of the world, but that's what I mean. If we've had like a lot of price increase all across the board in Australia with price of living and stuff. So already like on edge where it's like, do I want to spend $60 to $90 to go to a movie?
Yeah.
When people complain about like streaming services, but that's what, like $15 to $20 a month. And you get all these movies.
Yeah.
Where like you're paying $30 to watch one movie.
Yeah. So unless like the movie is really, really good, right?
That's the thing. Or even like at the point of this, like Inside Out just came out too. It's doing really well in the cinemas. But I think that's because it's also a family movie. I've heard great things about it as well. So that probably plays into it a bit as well. But like I'm sure this was R-rated. So it's not like I can't take the family to go watch people get smashed over the head and run over by cars.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's a lot of things at play at the moment, which I feel a bit sad about. But sometimes there's, like, I love Blade Runner, like we talked about that. That didn't do well in a box office either. And there's a ton of other movies that don't do well in box office. I feel like it's very rare. Like, I think that movie I think's about that, like Oppenheimer, that's a movie I wouldn't think would have done well in the box office, but that was a huge thing. What are other movies? Like Dune. Even Dune, I thought would have maybe struggled a bit in the box office. That did well. So I feel like movies that are like of the vein of maybe a long length, maybe not the usual movie. It's not very cookie. I do like George Miller has the way he does his films, but I do feel like it is very different from what we would usually expect from a blockbuster, even though you can't even call this a blockbuster, really.
Another aspect I think that kind of affected the performance at the box office is now how expensive it is to make a movie, especially when you want to put in like big names actors like Chris Hemsworth. I did a bit of research, and in terms of like the budget, like $6 million of the movie were just used to pay the actors alone.
That doesn't even seem that bad.
Well, I mean, there was a rumor that Chris Hemsworth got 10 times more than Anya Taylor-Joy.
I'm actually surprised about that because I would argue she's a better actress.
Yeah. But the thing is, like, she has been in a lot of movies, but not commercially success. Like Chris Hemsworth, even though he's been in like some other worse movies, but he's been in the Marvel universe.
I'm even trying to think of Anya Taylor-Joy's maybe like biggest film.
The Menu.
Maybe?
Yeah. So like she's a good actress, and she's
an amazing actress. Yeah, I think she's one of the greatest ones at the moment.
Yeah, and she's been in like good movies, but commercially successful movies is
that's like another thing because that could be another. But I do think we're very far from like names drawing like a big audience. Like you think like, I have like an Arnie. Or who else? Like Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise.
But he has his own thing.
Yeah.
Like the big names don't do it anymore.
Tom
like
Hanks.
The Rock, the Tom Hanks. They're not going to draw it completely. They're like, oh, Tom Hanks has got a movie. I'm going to go watch it. I don't think it quite works like that now.
Yeah. And that's what I meant. Like now it's a lot more expensive to make a movie. Like, like if you think about it, like after you pay for all the actors and all the people who work on the movie, you will need to allocate an extra budget just to market the movie because of how saturated the market is.
They usually don't share that because it's like, that's a lot of money in the marketing.
Yeah, especially now with all of the competition from all the streaming platforms like Netflix, people can just pay $20 a month and they have access to like thousands of movies.
Yeah, right? Like I think that helped. But that's why I was like referring. I'm like, you've got all these easier access to movies. Like, why would I want to spend like an absorbent amount to go watch a movie unless it's like amazing? I do think this is an amazing movie, but it's just like it's in such a weird spot.
Yeah.
Because going in, I thought, I'm like, oh, maybe it might be like a bit odd or a bit weird, but I do think it's a really good movie.
Yeah.
So I'm a bit surprised, but also like I can see maybe why people didn't go to watch it. But I would say my viewpoints on movies probably isn't like a very, like I wouldn't say I'm the normal viewer of like consuming like movies.
Yeah. And I would say as well, like if we eliminate the external aspects of the movie world, right? If we talk about the movie itself, I don't think the story has that kind of drawing power. I think Fury Road did so well is because it has a lot of different things going on for it. It was like a reboot of an old franchise. It has a lot of practical effects, which is a bit different to all the other CGI movies. Plus,
the word of mouth, I think,
the
was
word of
huge
mouth
with that movie.
And in terms of the story itself, the story has enough mysterious aspects going on around it, like because if you want to stay relevant to the audience, you need to get the audience involved in the conversations. When you watch Fury Road, you'll be like, oh, Furiosa came from this citadel, oh, what happened to her? And then then you created the forums of the fans talking about like fan fictions and different ideas. And I think
I do think Fury Road's a lot simpler as well.
Yeah,
it's a very simple idea.
Yes. Easier to follow, but the thing is like
I don't think Furiosa is like that much more difficult to follow, but it's a bit more complex compared to like Fury Road.
Yeah,
where you probably maybe not paying attention, but it's like you can see all the shit going on. It's like I like that,
and I have nothing against like exploring the world, like because this thing has been done in other movies, like John Wick, for example.
Yeah, they even do it.
yeah,
when it's just like New York.
But what I was trying to say is, I think personally, one of the aspects that makes Fury Road successful is the mystery around the characters, especially Furiosa. Because when people watch the movie, it's like, oh, what is her motivation? She came from the city, but then she betrayed the people who grew, like help her, and then it created all these conversations among the fans, and then it helps the movie stay relevant. People will need to go back to see it again to find more clues. But I think that when Furiosa came out, it kind of limits the amount of directions for a story to go. Oh, this is what happened to her. She was captured. Okay, and then she climbed up the ranks. Okay, so you kind of kill the conversations, in my opinion.
I strongly disagree with that because I think this adds a lot to Fury Road.
Yeah,
because I wasn't watching. I feel like it already did a good job of Furiosa's story in that movie.
Yeah.
Of kind of like what was happening, what her goals were. Yeah. Like at the start, it's a bit of a mystery. It's like, why would she betray the people she's working with? But it leads into like showing why she does.
Yeah.
This just really shows you all why, where she came from, why she really wanted to go back there, all the things she dealt with. Like, we haven't really touched on her story too much, but in this, like, she deals with so much heartache and struggle.
Yeah.
And her goal was always trying to get home.
Yeah.
And I feel like it adds a lot to Fury Road. I don't, like, when I watch that movie, I'm not like thinking, oh, like, shit, I know what happens to Furiosa now, or her backstory.
Yeah.
Because I still think, at this point, Mad Max is more mysterious than she is.
Yeah.
But, because I do think it adds a lot and does a very good job building the world and showing you a lot of things. Because usually in the other Mad Max films, the old ones, he doesn't really do that at all. He has no continuality. It's like... Mad Max 1, 2, and 3 feel all different. Yep. Like there's no like, oh, why isn't that in that? And people are Where in this, it's like actually trying to create like a little bit of like a universe, like we're trying to say. Yeah. But I feel like it adds a lot. There's she has like a romance story, which I feel like is a very big point, which is very well done. Her as a child witnessing all this stuff like Dementus does to like gain power and even sell her off to get his position in Gastown.
Yeah.
Like she learns a lot about the world
and
you can understand why she's like done this, trying to get away. I just thought it was very well done. And I thought her story added more to the movie than like taking away, like you would say, like the mystery is gone.
Yeah.
Like with Fury Road wasn't like $1 billion movie, right?
No.
It made enough. Like it did well.
Yeah.
I could maybe understand if it was like a blockbuster and made $1 billion or something, but it wasn't. It was just, it did well enough, right? and was a good movie.
Yeah.
Which is very rare. Very rare that a box office is also a good movie.
Yeah.
Because usually you get movies like this where it's like a good movie, but people aren't interested.
Yeah.
And that's what's hard, because that's why I was like talking about Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer, I wouldn't think it would be a larger audience, but it did. I don't know what it made, but it would have been close to $1 billion. But I don't know, because that's like that's where you see like why maybe people. That's what I thought about a lot, but that's hard because I'm like, I feel like it's catered to me, maybe like this movie.
Yeah.
But that's why I could feel like it's maybe not catered to a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm also torn about this movie as well because I enjoy it as a standalone movie, but it's not doing very well at the box office. And in the defense of the movie, I think it's very well made and it brings back a lot of positive things for like the production and the country. But I would say it's not a very strong movie. I would say in terms of like in terms of the story, because I would say the beginning of the movie was really powerful. Like when you get to the part where you should capture, but there was a dip in the story when you got like you lose 10 years of her life when she was in the Citadel, and then she grew up and she pretended to be a boy. That story dipped right there. I
can see like that could have been another good thing. Like I think that would have been interesting, but like this is a long movie as well.
Yes, it's like how long is it? It's like 2 hours and a half.
Yeah, it's like a long. Like add another half an hour to the movie or something if we go through her like sneaking around doing odd jobs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I can understand that as well. Like that would be like another interesting thing to go into. But like that's what we said, like 2.5 hours, and then you've still got like she hadn't even at the war rig at this point, right?
Yes.
So there's like a lot, and even when she gets to it, she hasn't got like the war rig. She's just like a part of it essentially, right? And then she like finds Jack, the like relationship or the romantic kind of relationship, and her. It's like her turning point for her character.
Yeah.
Because there was another point, I was maybe going to talk about this later, but this is maybe a good point to go into it. I was watching an interview with George Miller, and he was saying that most of his stories, he has a hero story. That's how he kind of looks at how the characters should develop. They have a goal in mind. Her goal, get back home, find a way, anything she does. But when she runs into Jack and Jack gets into trouble, it like deviates. Like this is a point where I'm like, now I have to, she had the point, like at that point she could go and get out.
Yes.
And leave him behind. But this is her point in her character arc where like, no, I'm leaving behind my own goal to do something else, to like try to fight against like what's happening to
like the bullet farm, like I really like the character of Praetorian Jack. He doesn't have a lot of lines in this movie as well, but his expression is like very cool, and he's supposed to be like the anchoring morality in this crazy world.
That's what I mean. Considering out of all the people she's met so far, he's like the most normal.
And all the action sequences are amazing. In this particular scene, you're right. So she had the choice to drive away, but she decided to turn back. And I think the relationship that they had is really intriguing. It's too bad that the character of Jack didn't last long in this movie.
But I think that's vital for her character growth as well. Like, I honestly wouldn't have minded a bit more of that, because I do think it's an interesting relationship, because as we usually see it, it's very like steamy and touchy-feely and like very sexual, but this was not like that at all. I don't even think, there's no kissing in this, is there?
No.
It's just
it's
very...
all head touching.
Yeah. I think that's very... Well, Planet of the Apes as well, they do that. But I feel like it's very touching, like it's not... it's not sexualized or anything. It is just like their relationship built on trust and like belief and hope.
Yeah.
It isn't so like built up in like how she looks and how hot he is. You know what I mean? There's like, it feels real. It's not so like Hollywood.
Yes.
That's why I enjoyed that part. That's why it was even terrible by like when they eventually get caught and he like gets tortured by getting pulled about on the back of that bike. Yeah. And then she rips off, how we figure out how she loses her arm. She pretty much rips it off.
Yeah.
To go get vengeance.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, like all those set pieces are very good, and I wish I could have seen a bit more of Jack. Hopefully, in the next movie he might come
back from the dead.
Or like we can see the story where he became the famous Praetorian Jack.
I think that might even, if people weren't watching Furiosa, Darren, I don't think there'll be many people seeing what happened to Jack.
And I think this is now like a good segue for me to ask the next question. The idea is now a lot of movie studios, they try to turn a successful movie into a franchise. If you look at a lot of movies these days, the Planet of the Apes. You have Dune is coming out in part 3 now. And, you know, even Happy Gilmore is coming out with part 2. The John Wick saga, the Mad Max saga.
Matrix.
The Matrix. Yeah. Like you can
Indiana
go on
Jones, they felt like they could keep making movies.
God. Yeah. So why do you think the movie studios are doing this? And is this like a good formula for success?
I've said this a lot. They're still run as a business. They just want money, right? They see the name, like on the sadder end, like Matrix and Indiana Jones. They're just like, the name will sell it. Even though I feel like Matrix was already like not very high. And when the new movie came out, people probably had like, oh, maybe like going back. I still haven't watched it because of how bad people say it is.
Yeah.
Same with the new Indiana Jones movie. People say it isn't as bad as like the Crystal Skull, but I'm like, I'm fine with maybe just watching the old ones and leaving these alone. But that's the thing. Because I don't know what the box office were, but I'm sure they made enough money that they didn't lose. And that's all they care about, right? Because another one I think about is the Godzilla movies / King Kong. Like, they've just gone all in on the, like, we're just big beasts fighting things, which is fine. They're just, like, fun movies. But it's not... I really enjoyed that first Godzilla movie, the new one. The kind of a bit more slow, built up, where now they're just, like, they're just fucking going at it. Which is fun. Like, people enjoy that stuff. It's just not for me. But it makes money. Like, I think at this point, I don't know if it is the high grossest movie of the year or is... like the Godzilla King Kong. It probably won't be there. I think in now it might probably take it, but it's crazy. Like, I think of a movie like that, which is fine. It's just meant to be fun. And then I think of like Furiosa and I'm like, oh, it's probably a better movie, but that's not what people want to see sometimes, or that's not what's going to make money. Yeah. Which it makes me sad sometimes, but yeah. It is what it is, right? You know. Yeah, and I think now you have to consider. You know, you mentioned that a lot of film studios, they are a business at the end of the day, and they want to make money and they want to meet the bottom line. Now, if you think about their competitions outside of the other film studios, they have to compete with like Netflix, Amazon Prime, all the streaming platforms. It's strange because I do agree with that, but it's like how many Netflix movies are you like, oh, that was amazing. Most of the time, you're just like. It did waste an hour and a half of my life. But now, you know, like... I get it. It's like an easier movie to shit out a Netflix movie compared to like $160 million blockbuster movie. And I think nowadays, like the audience, they are more tuned into like series. Like they want to watch one episode and the next definitely episode. For streaming. Definitely for streaming. Yeah. So probably that's why the studios think like, oh, if we have a good movie, we might as well turn it into like a series or a saga. It might be more worth it to do it that way. Like this, you could be right. Like maybe Furiosa was like a series. Maybe it would hit more eyes because you have more episodes. And if the first one's amazing, people are like, oh, we got to get onto this, right? Yeah. And maybe give it a chance to get what it needs. But I don't know what George Miller's views is because he's like, I'd assume mostly in control of this stuff. I don't know if he'd want to do something like that. Yeah. But apparently he was planning to make another movie for the Mad Max as well. Right? I think he wanted to make like a series because I watched one of the interviews he did and it did seem like they wanted to make a universe, but he also said, depending on how Furiosa did. And I was like, oh. Yeah. I would have liked more movies, but considering something amazing would have to happen for this to get more. Yeah. Like I do think, like you said, it'll have like good reviews and critiques would all be like, I think raving of it or very highly of it. But that doesn't matter to the studios when it's not making money. Exactly right. And I would say, you know, and I think this is like the last point that I want to bring up is if you are a fan of the Mad Max series and you want to see the next movie, just go into the theater and support Furiosa. Please watch this. Please watch this. I would like to see more of these. Yeah. I mean, like the idea of the Wasteland War is phenomenal. It is great. Yeah. I was also a bit sad, like we're saying about things cut off. That it leads into like a war with Dementus and like the Citadel and the rest of the world. Yeah. They have like a big war and it's kind of like more of a montage and like we see it. That would have been cool to see as well. I'd imagine cars ramming into each other, throwing bodies at each other. I hope that if the next movie gets made, they should include like a battle scene between the three powers. Yeah, that would be cool. That would be great. But I was thinking of a stupid name, the War of the Furiosa or something, the War of the Planet, War of the Mad Max World. The Mad World. I'm just trying to put the Planet of the Apes naming into it. The War of the Cars of the Mad Max Saga. Is there anything else you want to add for the Furiosa episode? I know, I feel like there's a lot, but I don't know how much longer we want to speak about this. But There's so many things I enjoy. We didn't talk about like we glanced on like the shots in this scene, but some of the action scenes in this are amazing.
Yeah.
Like every time they're like my favorite one's when they're in a war rig and they're driving and they've got the guys like on the pendulums that like swing back and forth to attack the war rig. And even the ones when they've got like the flying bikes.
Ah, yes.
And the way that it's
the
like
octopus.
almost one shot.
Yeah, yeah.
How it like follows them all. That was amazing as well.
Yeah.
Like, oh
you know
my
what the
God.
second movie was missing, right?
What was that?
The flaming guitarist.
It was, but I feel like there was so many other amazing things. And we didn't even touch on Chris Hemsworth much in this movie.
Yeah.
I thought he was amazing as the villain.
Yeah.
Like he was such like a great antagonist for like Furiosa to follow and like hunt down. Because she was still like ready to leave it all until he killed Jack, sorry.
Yeah.
And then her vengeance scene when she gets into that car and steals it and the guy's, who was that? It was the seventh rider of the like of like the coming of death or something. I'm like, okay, that sounds hella sick. And how she like chases them all down and stuff.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, when we were talking about the actors, like the Australian actors, you know, the second in command to Dementus, like the guy that like dances around a lot and like picks the guy. He's like, oh, pick a guy, anyone, and see what, and then he like jumps down and like blows them all up.
Oh, is this Rictus, like the big bald guy? Is it the big bald guy?
No. This is the guy that helps Dementus. And at the end, he pretends to be him. And she like chases him second or something.
Yeah.
He's actually a comedian that I used to watch a lot when I was younger. He was a part of the Umbilical Brothers.
Yeah.
I remember I'm like, oh. And he had like a pretty big role in that.
Yeah. Just like I mentioned, right? Like I'm very torn about this movie as well because like all the good things going on for the movie, like with Chris Hemsworth's performance as an antagonist, all the people who are involved in the movie, but for some reason it just couldn't get it over the line to get to the bottom line, and I was trying to figure out what went wrong.
Yeah, I was the same way as well. I'm like, why didn't this do well?
Too bad. Well, I mean, like we can definitely do another episode to talk about like the whole world of Mad Max in the reboot. You know, we could talk about like the ideas of the Citadel,
and even maybe watch the old ones and see how it refers to it.
Yeah. But yeah, other than that, do you want to add anything else?
No, I think I'm sure there's more I would love to talk about, but I think this is a good point to leave it at.
All right, awesome. So we have reached the end of the episode. I hope you guys enjoyed this. And click the subscribe button, click on the bell to get notification for the next episode. And I'm Darren.
And I'm Tim.
And this has been Movie Beings.